Alright, welcome back, and we're headed into turn 5 here of our 1939 Ultra play test. And as you can see, the Japanese are still in Alaska. Perhaps not for long, but I might leave them up there. Americans were able to wrest control away from the Japanese. If you saw the last video, the Japanese landed in San Francisco, causing 10 kinds of grief. But the Americans, of course, were able to push them out and had to rebuild. So they built a shiny new factory there. And because they had railed over some AA guns, at least it's protected. But I think it's out of the range of the bombers. And the main U.S. fleet, the Pacific Fleet, is now at Pearl and out of real harm's way. There is some Japanese nastiness going on down here. A little bit of a convoy for the Americans, which is unfortunate for them. Not much else to say there. The Japanese fleet, as you can see, is up here off the coast of the Soviet Union, and this is what it looks like. So, yeah, definitely got some punch there. Let's head on down and take a look at Anzac. Anzac built 3 destroyers this turn and has sortied out a very modest fleet. I'll call it a small task force out to Western Australia, where they have a port they can utilize and move 3, and they brought a bomber just to add a little bit of fun. A Japanese destroyer came out here, sank a transport. So the Anzac replied in kind and came and sank the destroyer with no loss to themselves. And as you can see, the Anzac economy is doing quite well. They are sitting at 18 currently. So they're able to prosecute a fairly decent war, because they also get a bonus for having transports. If the Commonwealth has a bunch of transports, all the Commonwealth nations get bonuses varying from 1 to 5, depending on the size of their fleets. A little modest Japanese fleet down there. Japanese spending some money on bombers. Built a couple of those this turn. Have a couple more over here, of course. Fairly static lines happening here in China. And a lot of Chinese troops. But the Japanese, now that they've had their fun off in America, are turning their sights towards heading further inland, and are building some fast movers that can tow some heavy artillery that will no doubt make life miserable for the Chinese contingent. Over here in Siam, the entire Japanese Air Force is here because it was used to take Saigon and French Indochina from the French, and for the loss of only 1 infantry total. And also some aircraft came and helped out here in Sumatra, killing the 2 Dutch troops that were there for the loss of nothing. So fairly successful for the Japanese. You will see, however, that Burma is back in British control, which did give China their +5 bonus. Likely the last round they're going to get that. But we may see some fun, because I did build a couple of tanks. We've got 4, I believe, 4 British tanks here, and some aircraft that could deal out some love and affection down the Burma Road if need be. So that should be interesting to see what I end up doing with that. Not a lot of Japanese ground troops down here, but enough that they could take it and cause a little bit of problems. As I say, the Chinese continue to grow. Build 4 more boys this time, or 5 more, pardon me, and we'll build 5 more the next turn. The Soviets have coagulated up here in the Soviet Far East and are ready to cause some grief to the Japanese when the time is right. And right now they've got about a dozen infantry and 1 tank. So they could cause some little bit of consternation for the Japanese, causing them to wheel about. Down here, South Africa is now making $8 per round. Now that's great news for them, because they could build 2 fast movers a turn, or possibly just build 1, save some money, build a bomber the next turn, right? They can build all sorts of neat things down here. Now the only problem with that is that's kind of taking food out of the mouth of the UK. That could obviously use some help as well. Now, Cairo's not under threat, as we know. All the fleets are gone in the Mediterranean. And the French Foreign Legion really took it on the chin here in Cyrenaica They were attacked. All three of them died and did not deal any retaliatory pain. So we're down to 2 French troops on the board. That is it. These 2 French units. Everything else is bye-bye. So fairly thinned out and not a lot of pushing and shoving going on here in Africa. In the next little while, I think it's this standoff that you tend to get where you're not strong enough to take that other person out, but they're not strong enough to take you out. So we'll probably have an uneasy détente as the weapons of war continue to be manufactured here on the North African coast. The Italians did build a couple of cruisers, $11 each, and they decided to let's start to rebuild the Navy a little bit and give it some love and affection. As you can see, lots of German planes down here. And if you're not familiar with Ultra, you have a lot of German stuff in these miners, and they can build in the miners, and the miners are building, but you cannot attack from these territories until Yugoslavia and Greece are both under German control or Axis control. And that just happened this turn with the Germans taking Greece from the British. And now that that's happened, now you can go into the Soviet Union. But you cannot attack the Soviet Union until you have Yugoslavia and Greece under your control. You can't attack the Soviet Union from Romania. So I really like that rule because it's historical. Plus, it does cause the Axis to put some effort in down here. You just can't leave it and say, it's okay, we're just going to go take Moscow. You've got to really work at it. And there you have it. It's taken the entire German Air Force and a lot of their ground troops coming down here. They didn't lose much in the assault, a couple of infantry divisions. But now they are tooled up, ready to go. Likely this turn, Barbarossa will be happening. But the Russians have played it to perfection. I guess that sounds a little braggy since I'm the Russians, but I'm also the Germans. But knowing that Barbarossa is coming, leaving one guy in the front of each, that's as far as they can go, so not going to be that big of a deal. However, there is a good stack of infantry up here in Viipuri, which is located next to both Leningrad and Karelia. And Leningrad, definitely the tougher nut to crack. And I left Karelia not so much open as tempting. So if the Germans do want to go in there, they do outnumber them, but they do not hit as hard. So I might not even have an assault up there. They might just be holding the line. Over here in Western Europe, the Germans continue to bulk up. I keep building guys and sending them to the coast. Because in my mind, I am going to bring it with Britain and America when they come. And I don't want it to be this cheesy little, one guy defending the coastline. So I've been trying to bulk up. That is at a bit of a cost to the Eastern Front, but you do not need to take Moscow to win this game as the Axis, right? So perhaps they do not need all the horses that were used historically to get to Moscow. Horses literally and figuratively. So I've built some fast movers here in West Germany, built some more infantry, and have rebuilt the German Luftwaffe up north. We were down to 1 tactical, I think is all we had left up there. So I used a lot of Germany's money to do what I have done there. Try to be a bit of a threat to the North Sea and the English Channel. As you can see, the English Channel is there. And the British bulked up here, built a cruiser, and added 2 more transports. So it's a decent fleet now, far too strong when coupled with the British ability to scramble, 3 Spitfires, should they choose. So I think that fleet is likely here to stay. I am toying about with the idea of building like 10 subs for Germany. I'm really thinking about it, but we'll see. Maybe I should have a nap before I decide to do that. Further west and south, we can see the Americas, now unfettered by the isolationist policy that was strongly championed by the majority of politicians and people in America. They have finally decided to get into the war thanks to the Japanese attack on San Fran. And they came down and were able to grab a couple of bucks from Brazil, as well as the Minas Gerais. I don't know. Don't know what if I'm saying that right. But hey, fun little coastal battleship and a transport, and they brought down their whole Atlantic fleet because I think what we're going to do is try to kill this before it goes German. All right. Also, we came into Mexico and Baja on the other side of the map. I don't think I highlighted that, but yeah, took both of those. So here we go. Built 3 Marines, built 3 tanks, and built a loaded carrier. The Canadians had to move guys back from here to here because they were headed over to help stop the Japanese. We do have a man and an artillery up in the Yukon freezing their butts off, but they're there to make sure the Japanese don't get crazy. And so we built a fighter and another man and an artillery. We've got a couple of transports here, so decent. We'll have 3 guys, an artillery, and a fighter landing in London on the next turn. But we do have to be mindful of this Italian sub. It came out here, sank a British transport, and got to make sure that we take care of that, or at least try not to get sunk by it. There's actually nothing that the... Oh, I guess we can reach from here now, and we do have a destroyer. And we do have a little sub-chaser here, so we are a torpedo boat. So maybe, we'll see. The Italian sub or the Argentinian Navy. Choices. A target-rich environment, as it were. All right, so that is round 4, headed to round 5. This is a really good game, folks. The balance here is incredible. Even with the Japanese foray into San Francisco, they're coming back, and they do have enough stuff on the mainland here to be competitive. It'll be interesting to see what happens on round 5. Really loving this Ultra, folks. It's a good one. Stay tuned. All right, so here we are at the beginning of round 6, and as you can see, the Canadians have recaptured British Columbia, thereby returning some honor to the Canadian West. Now you can see we're kind of spinning around. I'm on the other side of the table because there's some neat things that have happened. So the Japanese thought they'd come over here and try their hand at poking the bear, and took a couple from them, and the Soviets responded by taking northern Manchuria. Of course, we could have sent everybody in to cause as much grief as possible, but with the main Japanese fleet sitting here, some transports, obviously lots of air power, not a good idea. The Communist Chinese have felt the wrath of the veteran troops. Yes, they came in and smashed the big stack that the commies had. So it's twilight for communist China. Mao is off hiding in a cave somewhere. The KMT did have some nominal success. They charged in with 7 infantry and their fighter to take on 4 veterans. That's all that was left because their forces really got beat up in the attack of Shenxi. And it was not looking good for the first 3 rounds, and then all of a sudden the Chinese caught fire and were able to dispatch the veteran troops. So the Japanese still have these 6 veteran troops. They're down to half of what they start the game with. Looking over here, just some builds going on in the Japanese mainland factories. Put some fast movers out there. And here we bulked up Hong Kong because this stack was sitting right in Guangxi and I needed to bring some stuff in there. But the Guangxi group went over to Yunnan and took that. For the Japanese, though, brought in a ton of stuff, well, as much as they could bring into Burma. They really wanted to hold it, and hold it Japan did. So that cut off $5 from the Chinese coffers this round. Not a friendly thing to do. FEC responded by marshaling their troops, and everybody headed out here to Bangladesh, and they're posturing for a little bit of a dust-up, and we shall see. Well, in the Pacific, the Americans had highs and lows, really, in one area. They came down here with a couple of transports and their whole Pacific fleet, and they mixed it up with 2 cruisers, 2 destroyers, and a sub. Now, out of it, they ended up with 2 broken battleships, but salvageable. But they brought a marine, artillery, and a man, hoping to dislodge the Japanese, and they got 1 hit in 3 rounds of combat. The Japanese didn't fare much better, but as you can see, there's a pillbox there, and the pillbox is an automatic hit on anybody who's invading the Japanese island there. So, right off the bat, we lost the infantry, but nobody else on the first round. But we're very, very anemic. So, we have to figure out what we're going to do about that. Because I love this, by the way. I love these Japanese pillboxes. You can see them. I built 5 of them last round because I knew, as America, you want to come down and take the Carolines, right? But if you don't come down with enough strength, this is what happens. You just throw away a marine and an artillery and an infantry. You get nothing for it. Nothing. Nothing at all. The Philippines has a military base, as does the Carolines, so they're able to just put 1 infantry class unit there per turn. Not much else going on around here. The Japanese came and took Brunei from Far East Command, further deflating their economy. Over here we have Anzac building a sub and trying to bulk up a little bit of a navy there. We also have, let's see what's going on this side. That's pretty much it. China has had their last build of 5 for a while. It'll be interesting to see what goes on here. Without transports, this Japanese here doesn't really scare FEC. They've got lots of firepower. Look at this. They've got 5 fighters and a tactical, 4 tanks, and a ton of meat shields. So they got more than Japan has. So I'm probably going to go on a bit of a hike here down to Siam. The Japanese are doing a little bit of convoying here, and they're also convoying the Americans in the mid-Pacific. So, and it's annoying. It's annoying. Let's see here. The Russians, after having been invaded, didn't attack anybody. Mainly because they were not in a position to attack. Oh, I forgot to move this. This guy was definitely getting moved, as was the artillery. Playing by yourself sometimes. Anyway, so, decent stack of German love and affection coming your way. But not a ton of tanks. Not a ton. They've got 6 tanks, that's it there. And over here they've got 5 medium tanks and a couple of lights. So, not a huge threat to the stacks and stacks of infantry and the fortifications. There's one there, there's one in Moscow, one in Oral-Kursk, and one in Stalingrad. So you can see that there's a lot of places for the Soviets to build troops. They don't have a fortification here, though. But they don't have enough. The Germans don't have enough to. I really looked at it and I ran the numbers. They did not have enough to win this at all, especially knowing how I roll. So they did attack Murmansk, though. Just they broke 1 division off, came north. And then you can see the Barbarossa die. Now what the Barbarossa die does is that denotes 1 territory that the Russians are not allowed to attack on the turn that Operation Barbarossa occurs. So the Russians couldn't come into here, since there's only 1 boy in there anyway. I thought that was the place to go, because they're obviously not going to attack these places where I've got tons of troops. They just didn't have the ability to attack and have any sort of hope of doing well. So, the Finnish destroyer skedaddled, came out to here, but then the Soviet fleet sortied here, and they're off the coast of Norway. The Germans continue to bulk up with lots and lots of men, built 10 men in West Germany this turn, and are still moving things about, and just causing all sorts of problems for any sort of Allied landing. I do have to actually put another Czech Hedgehog on, likely going to go into Denmark, and after that we'll be building coastal guns if necessary. Looking pretty good. But the British have also bulked up. They've got some 4 fighters, 2 tacticals, and there's an American bomber here ready to go. And the Canadians have brought some boys over with more on the way. The Americans are ready for a very serious landing now. So we've got 6 armored divisions, and we've got 9 transports, including a couple of Marines. So we've got enough to fill up the transports and then some. And then we're going to head east. Not exactly sure if we're going to head straight for Bordeaux and put the pressure on the Germans immediately, or head here and then when we land in Normandy use the D-Day die to inflict some insta-chaos. I'll explain that when that happens. Down here, the Americans have been able to capture all of this. I brought a transport up, grabbed the guy from Mexico, and brought him down. We got Boa. It says Boa Vista, but I think it's pronounced Bon. And then Recife, Porto Veo, and Curitiba. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I have friends in Brazil now, so I'm trying to say things properly. And as you can see, they did come down here, and this is a story for the ages. So they came down and attacked the destroyer, coastal battleship, and the transport. And they attacked them with their coastal battleship, a submarine, and the patrol boat, torpedo patrol boat, or I forget what we're calling them in this game, but the little guy fires at a 3. Well, we lost the little guy in the first round, and then we got another hit here, and both of the hits, the one on the PT boat and the one on the coastal battleship, were both done by the transport at a 1. Bang, bang. So, very strange. But Brazil is now fully occupied, and that means that this is very, very Axis. Over here, just built one thing for South Africa so that we can do a we have 12 bucks now, so we can build a bomber or build a fighter, build a tactical, and send it north. So that'll be fun. Once again, though, it does hurt the British economy, only building infantry to land in France because that's all we can afford. Brought a couple guys over here from the Middle East because nothing's going on there. And we've got quite a bit of love and affection here in the form of tanks. I think we got 9 tanks here. And the Italians have 5. But the Italians have a few more meat shields and a far superior air force. Plus, yeah, built a couple of transports this turn, so they'll be able to bring these guys over and perhaps force a landing in Transjordan. We'll see, because there is no British fleet, and didn't really want to be spending money on British boats, but I may have to this next turn. I might have to actually bite the bullet and build a British boat in the Med, which throwing money away, though. Throwing money away. So, as you can see, I mentioned before, FEC is doing pretty well, except for getting convoyed, which is a real pain. All right, and here's Anzac, a little closer, and their cute little fleet. All right, well, that's it for round 5, and that's all the time I have today. So we're going to hopefully be able to pick this up next week and finish off rounds 6 and 7 and start to paint a nice picture of how this game is going to go. But until next time, hug your loved ones, thank your friends for playing, and as we always say here, may those dice be with you.